Morning, everybody. Another Cute for Teams, champions using Teams effectively. Glad you could make it. Ricardo, I think I'm flying solo today, but you never know. Stacy or Nash might pop in. But otherwise, here for another week of talking about teams and collaboration in general. And so we're here to help try to answer questions or talk about different topics. Hopefully y'all know, this is certainly a place to come to kind of get questions answered about, what's the latest update on X, Y, and Z, but it's also, meant to be a place for just general best practices or how to. So across the board, I don't want to make it seem like this is a status only kind of call or a feature roadmap call. It is certainly meant to, let Microsoft Teams and Office 365 lovers like us just geek out on it, for a nice 30 minutes. So we can kind of go anywhere with this. Feel free to use the chat or come off mute. I was wondering if people might be interested, and I know we had talked about the Q&A feature rollout last time, and I know there's some challenges with that with government and folks that may not have adopted Yammer, but I do have, we're looking right now at a commercial tenant, so we can certainly show that if you at least want to kind of see what it looks like, even if it may not be available to you yet. But if there's are there any other burning questions or thoughts? I see a hand there. Go ahead. David.
Hey, Ricardo. I mean, this is kind of just a curiosity question. It's not really something that you have to give me a straight answer on. But I always am curious that when Teams creates either a Teams channel, it always has the SharePoint back end that gets created.
Right.
And what does Microsoft think about people using that as like a backdoor to get their SharePoint sites built using the Teams channel versus actually, in our tenant getting the SharePoint site brought up organically in its native role, not with the Microsoft Teams attachment to it?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know what the great designers of these things think. I'll just give my thoughts there because you're right. For every team that's created, a SharePoint site's created in the back end. The channels, the normal channels, basically create folders in that team. You do get a whole other site when you do private channels, but in general, it's one site per one team. In my view, that site is essentially the same as you say, an organically created site elsewhere. So as far as the system's concerned, I don't know how much it cares. I mean, I think who cares are those who are involved in the governance in your org for managing that data and the administration of it. I know some of the customers I've worked with, there might be a different group of people who are managing SharePoint sites that are built organically versus those that are just part of a team site. So if someone's making a Teams, site to get a SharePoint site, I could see an org where that kind of, messes with governance policies per se. The system, I don't know that it cares. And in fact, from an admin's perspective, I still have a portal to see all of those sites. They'll kind of get tagged a little differently in the kind of the list view of those sites. But I feel like that's more of a potential governance headache if people are circumventing those kind of things. I've certainly seen customers whose administrators are, knowing that connection between Teams and SharePoint, are administering both the Teams creation as well as the organic SharePoint site creation. So they got their arms around, all of it. So yeah, hopefully, admins kind of understand that Teams in that SharePoint site have that connection and aren't treating it like totally separate, you know. So yeah, I don't know what the official, you know, guidance would be there. But yeah, and I guess thrown in that mix is, you know, Office 365 groups. You know, before Teams came around, that was kind of the de facto collaboration object or concept. And so, again, hopefully those administrators and governance folks have evolved, you know, their O365 group concept into their new governance as well. Because people may be making a team site to try to get what they were getting previously with a group, right? A discussion list, and if anybody still, you know, uses those versus the chat, all those kind of things. So to me, that's a good governance conversation, you know, not so much how do I control people and keep them from backdooring things, but, you know, just making sure everyone, end user and administrators alike, kind of understand all those moving parts. I don't know. Did that help?
Yeah, that definitely, and the fact that you know, Microsoft and you guys are aware of that feature, I guess, you saying that it's more of an admin thing of if we need to address that on our end here, but it doesn't sound like you can really address it if somebody wants to use that site. There's really no way around it. There's no way to prevent that from getting.
Well, you can certainly control who can create teams. You can certainly control who can create a SharePoint site, you know, so you can lock that down. Now, but if I've given someone the ability to create a team and their intent was to create the team just so they could get a SharePoint site, that's the part where I'm wondering who necessarily cares about that, right? You were authorized to create these assets. You just happen to only want to use a part of it. In my mind, eventually that person comes around and realizes the value of the teams that's connected to their SharePoint site anyway and ends up using it. But yes, you know, you certainly don't have to have a world where people can create whatever they want without any management of that. You know, you certainly decide who has that ability. A lot of customers I work with, you know, nothing gets created without like an IT, you know, support ticket, and then someone with the authority creating it for them. So,
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes good sense. Thanks.
Tim, did you want to add something to that, or did you have your own question?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, the one thing that I think that we have found out, you know, when the team site that the SharePoint site that you get with the team, you know, it's designed for the team to collaborate on. So so the SharePoint site that you're going to get that's created as a standalone SharePoint site is, you know, I mean, obviously it's why Microsoft calls them communication site. It's the one-to-many site. The problem you have with the team site, let's say you have a pretty large team and it's a public team, anybody can go in there and edit that site, right? That's the one issue that we've seen. So like we have a team, say, it's got couple hundred people on it, right? And we made it public because we wanted to make it easy to join. There'll be time if I just want to, you know, have that site set up to actually, you know, push out information. There's times when I go there and I see people are inadvertently editing it and they don't know what they're doing. So to me, that's a distinction that's worth drawing on it, especially for your public website. If it's a private team, it's not really going to make that much difference, right? Because you want everybody to go to that SharePoint site if you're using it, but then it's for collaboration purposes. So to me, that's a big difference.
So I love a lot of different parts of that, right? You guys probably know I'm a big SharePoint geek. Before I was a big Teams geek, I was a SharePoint geek. I was a SharePoint consultant for many years, so I love SharePoint topics. And what you're saying is true. You know, as you can see here, you know, a SharePoint site for a team gets a certain standard setup, which is everyone's a member, and most SharePoint sites by default get created that way, which means everyone can edit, can collaborate, right? It's not a lockdown one-to-many where a couple people have master control and everyone else just is read-only. Most sites kind of start out by default as everyone can, you know, create, edit, and delete stuff, right? So understanding that default behavior, you know, is important. Now, with any site, including the ones that a Teams team would create, I can certainly change this and, turn members into, read only or whatever kind of lockdown I want to do. So, you know, that's just important to remember too. We don't have to necessarily accept the fact that yes, people can edit it in here. That is the default configuration, but I can certainly lock down whatever I need to. And the other point you say is true too. There's not just one type of SharePoint site, right? There's flavors. And so to your point, the one created by Teams is kind of what we're looking at here, which is the same kind of site that the old school Office 365 group created, which has the conversations button and has a documents area that these days is tied to Teams, and each channel gets a new folder and that good stuff. But it's also still a good old-fashioned SharePoint site as well. And all of those are different than, as you mentioned, the communication site, which is more meant for, or at least pre-configured for content creators to do news articles and more of a one-to-many kind of thing. So I think that's a great add-on to David's question of, that person that is making that site. They got some different options, like, what is their intent of that SharePoint usage? Because depending on their intent, them using Teams to make a site might actually, bite them, because hey, if you're intending to use that site as a new intranet, homepage, well, you could do it, but the initial configuration is not really going to support that. You're going to have to do some tweaks. So good stuff there. But yes, no matter what initial configuration you get, I always just point out the fact this is still good old-fashioned SharePoint. I can turn any SharePoint site I'm given into whatever I want, whether it's something that has a home page that's ready for news articles, whether I need to lock down everyone to read only and only 2 people can put content. I mean, all of those things can happen, usually in the back end on as a site owner on the back end with some of our settings here, site permissions, and all that good old-fashioned SharePoint stuff, right? I mean, we see right here, site owners having full control, site members limited, but it is edit capabilities, right? And then visitors with no control. And again, I can go in and change these as an owner, change them as I see fit. So involves some work for sure. Hopefully I'm good with what initially comes out when Teams creates a site, but if I'm not, I can go through and make this do whatever I want, down to the item level, right? Maybe I'm good with everything from a site-wide perspective, but this client evaluation spreadsheet, that's the one I got to lock down, so I can change permissions just on this particular document if that's the one I don't want the team to be able to access, or or just a few people. So yeah, full capabilities if you're willing to put in a little work, I guess. That's good stuff. To me, it's good too, because obviously SharePoint's been around long before Teams or Office 365 groups, and those of us who have spent years getting good at SharePoint, we didn't have to necessarily lose those skills because they all still apply. They just, it's just all we're dealing with is what the default configuration is these days as a result of a Teams created SharePoint site. But all the fancy skills we learned over the last, I think SharePoint's 17 years old now or something like that, we can still apply them. So that's good stuff. I'm assuming everybody, recognizes SharePoint's birthday every year. I'm assuming we all do that. So, or is that just?
Oh yeah, you should throw a party for it, Ricardo. We'll all come.
Yep, indeed. I need to start celebrating Team's birthday. I gotta figure out what that date is. That's good stuff. That Teams back in, and this is a conversation that can be a challenge for organizations who have come up, with years of SharePoint governance. I'm sure Teams was a little disruptive from that perspective when it comes in and wants to try to control some pieces of this SharePoint landscape that I've created. So I could see that, being a challenge. I've seen that with customers be a challenge, but at the end of the day, both Teams and SharePoint are really, their goal is, trying to empower that end user to collaborate. And in my opinion, that's why these default settings are the way they are. I am Teams, and I assume you want to get your this team and the people in this team up and running, collaborating right away. So why am I going to give you a site that's locked down and nobody can do anything? I'm going to give you a site where everybody can get going, you know. And usually that's probably the case for us. Sometimes though it's not, and that's when we start to tweak things. It's good stuff. Any other questions? Any thumbs up for hardcore SharePoint lovers in the room here? I see a few thumbs. I only see a couple though, so some of you maybe have a love-hate relationship with SharePoint, and I get that. I have been a SharePoint consultant in a lot of orgs over the years, and so I've seen that love-hate relationship. Yeah, good stuff. But of course, we all love Teams. That's why we're here. Any other burning questions, either on SharePoint or anything else? I think I'm missing anything in the chat here. Chat's put, so yeah, it's literally got the question yesterday about Q&A feature. So yeah, so I see in the chat someone's interested in seeing a Q&A, which I can show here quick. I don't know though, again, because even in my GCC demo tenant, my tenant isn't set up for Yammer, and so I couldn't, fire up anything there. So I still don't really have a good idea what the GCC story is going to be here related to Q&A, but just for the sake of kind of saying, yes, I've seen it, we can go in here again. This is a commercial tenant, and go ahead and fire up, let's say, a brand new meeting. Add somebody in there and call it Q&A test. Go ahead and send that out. Once that team is created, just making sure I was sharing. Oh, yeah, everybody should be seeing that. All right, once that's created, if I go in here, either here or in the meeting, we get the ability to add a tab or an app, and that's where that Q&A app comes into play there. I'm actually going to see, I'm going to join the meeting and actually do it there. So I actually just had a session last night, my coffee with the cowbell session, where I talked about, because some may be asking what's the big deal with this Q&A thing, and right, and so it's all about moderated chat, right? In our meetings, we certainly have chat, but this chat here that we're looking at, I can't control other than turning it off, right? But once it's on, I can't control if the 1,000 people in this meeting want to say whatever they want to say, it's going to come through. I can't stop one chat versus another. Versus in something like live event, that's where I can moderate, right? People can chat all day. The 20,000 people that might join the live event could send chats all day, but the 20,000 people will only see the chats that I allow. That's that moderation concept. So now with this Q&A feature, we are getting moderated chat in the standard Teams meeting, which we previously were only able to get in something like live event. So I'm in the meeting here now, and again, I have that Q&A. So I'm just showing I could have added this either in the meeting or over in the Teams desktop area. But I'm going to add it to this meeting. So it is an app, and it starts out asking me a few questions. What do I want the attendees to be able to do? So I want them to be able to ask questions and respond, and even post anonymously, maybe. And then I want organizers to be able to moderate those conversations. So I'm going to check all the boxes. And then once I am in, I get this. And so if you're familiar with live event, looks a little bit like our live event Q&A, looks a lot different than our regular Teams chat, but certainly behaves much more like our live event Q&A. I still have those options available to me after the fact with the gearbox here, but essentially, people can ask a question, And you can, if you're familiar with Yammer, you can tell that this has got that, you know, Yammer flavor there. Let's start. And obviously I'm posting this as the meeting owner, but I got a checkbox for posting anonymously, got some ability to do some things here, make it a discussion or a question. I'll keep it as a question for now and post it. And so in this case, we've got 3 tabs because I'm already the owner here. Mine is automatically published. So everybody's seeing that. If it was an attendee, it would have come into the review where I can decide whether to publish it to everyone or maybe dismiss it, or maybe even reply privately. Again, this is all the same kind of features as a live event Q&A moderation. So people can react to it. Again, reactions looking a little different than your typical Teams meeting. And an ability to continue to, you know, kind of have a conversation or response to that. I guess what is different here, though, is this discussion versus question piece. That is not in live event, that someone can post something that they're posing as a question, because as you can see here, when it's a question, there's a bunch of responses that could come, and someone could mark whether something is the best answer for that question. So that actually, now I think about it, is a new functionality if you're coming from a live event moderation experience. But that's essentially what that looks like here. And again, on the back end, if I was, you know, in this meeting, you know, back here and in the desktop, I have a dedicated tab for it where I get to see the same stuff. I feel like I might want to, you know, do my moderation here just because it's a little more space to work with. But obviously, you can go do it either way. So that's the gist of it. I guess what I'm not showing here is maybe what the what one of those attendees would see. If I could do that easily, let me try something real quick here. So if I go to the meeting info and I copy the link, let's open up a private window here. Try to jump in the browser. I'm not actually sure if the Q&A is supported for browser users or not. We're about to find out. So we'll see what this looks like. So I put myself in here. Come back over here and let them in. And then from an end user perspective, I don't see it for the browser user, it seems, because this is good old-fashioned chat here. So I would have to do a demo where I'm joining from another desktop, and probably even as a member of the org. Maybe I need to check to see, you know, what guests are allowed to do with Q&A and whatnot. But I think we at least proved the browser user doesn't get the benefit of that moderated Q&A. So yeah, maybe in a future session, can do a more elaborate demo, get a user that's tied in on the desktop. Tim, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Ricardo, you answered my first question with whether or not it worked in the browser, because I think I've told you before, we are heavy users of browser. The other is just the voting up. Yeah, I guess what I'd say is this: we have a lot of people that use Slido, right? And so that's the comparison. Does the voting up? I assume the question just stay where they are. You just see the number of votes, because something like Slido, it actually moves the questions up. You know, so a moderator could be picking off the top of the list based on people, you know, selecting voting. That's
yeah. Yeah, I think this is literally just marking one of the responses as a best answer. Not any like crowdsourcing or anything.
Right. And then that little chat, that box next to it is just the way that you reply. So
this here, the
That's
comment.
the way to comment. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Any other questions on that?
No, the only other thing I would be curious about, and we could, like you said, we can test this later and we can also test it as it starts rolling out more, but do you think it's going to be just like a live event where once you turn on that Q&A, does the chat now only allow the presenters, if you were doing a presentation in meetings or a webinar, do you think that would block out the attendees now, or do you think the attendees would still have chat like a regular meeting as well as the Q&A? Like, I wonder if it would shut chat off.
I haven't seen anything to suggest that it would do that. And to me, that functionality makes more sense in a live event because of the production kind of context that's doing. To me, I think Q&A and chat are going to continue to exist. Now, maybe as a meeting organizer that's really trying to keep this thing nice and clean, I might go into meeting options. If I know I'm going to heavily use Q&A in this particular meeting, I might go into meeting options and disable chat so that only if you want to chat in this meeting, you're only going to be able to do it through Q&A. Might be an approach. So then they come in here and chat's turned off. It's going to be hard for your browser attendees, as we just saw. But yeah, I'm not seeing any coupling of the between Q&A and regular chat. Yeah, that'd be an interesting concept. But yeah, to me, the normal meeting doesn't have that whole producer presenter vibe, and kind of like the people in the green room versus the people viewing. So
Yep.
Also not sure of the double. I've seen this happen a couple of times where I get this double thing here, and I think I even see that if I come over here. Is that true? Oh no, it's still just one. So that's good. I don't know why it's giving me two there. They seem to be the same. Yep. Little glitch there, I guess. So good stuff. So yeah, at least you can say you've seen it, even if it hasn't rolled out to you yet. Cool. We got, one more minute. If anybody's got any final questions, thoughts, or comments?
Hey, Ricardo, do you have a timeline on the Q&A feature for GCC?
Yeah, that's where Stacy would, because I know she watches the roadmap pretty closely. I don't right now. I'd have to go try to check some internal things there. But so this is but this is the commercial. We're in a commercial tenant now, so we kind of see that rollouts there. But
when I think she said we needed Yammer for it to work.
Right. So yeah, even if it was rolled out today in GCC without that GCC tenant also enabling Yammer, then I think it's going to work for you. So I'm hearing some public sector customers who are reevaluating their stance on Yammer, not necessarily because of this feature, but I mean, the evolution of it. People are reviewing and saying, are my needs here still met or not met, with it. So I don't know, maybe features like this and things like Viva Engage, which also is tied into Yammer, might have some public sector orgs, reevaluating their policy there with the increased innovation that's coming from that Yammer integration. So cool.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm glad to see everybody again, and yeah, good session. And so you guys enjoy your weekend, and we'll hit it again next Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and check out the blog for more content.